What up there in YouTube Guitar Land? Music Man RN coming at you with part 2 of your smiling face. If you had watched part 1 and gotten through that, you're probably wondering, oh, hey, what about that other part of the song? And that's what I'm going to try to get to. It's the part that kind of where the song changes after the second time through that kind of chorusy part. And the chorusy part, I'm referring to the. And basically, the change is instead of doing that kind of that pull off on that A suspended, when you on that chorusy part, you're going to basically do something a little different there that leads you to the next part of the song. And I'll just kind of play it here for you. Excuse me. And you can kind of hear when you play that chord, it should kind of go off in your head where it's like, oh yeah, it's like that leading kind of tone. It's going to lead me kind of to the next part of the song. And you know, basically the change is kind of where you would be doing that pull off in the timing of it. Instead of doing that, you're going to kind of go to that chord here. And what this chord basically is it's kind of like an A sharp, where you're basically playing a kind of an A chord, but instead of the bass note being that open A, it's going to be the first fret in the A string, which is an A sharp kind of note. So I'll kind of, just to kind of give you a feel for what I'm talking about here, I'll play through that chorus again. And you don't necessarily have to fret that entire kind of A shape. The main part of it is that you get that kind of A sharp note, and you're kind of still fretting that third fret, or excuse me, second fret of the B string. So again, instead of it kind of being that sound, when you add that A sharp bass note in, you get that kind of sound instead. So I'll kind of play through it. And that'll take you to that next kind of run of chords, which gives you that next part of the song. So kind of from there, you're going to go to I'll just kind of play it through real quick. And basically that sequence, after that kind of A sharp chord, you're going to go to a B minor, to an F sharp minor, which is basically kind of an F sharp bar chord, but lift off that middle finger there, into a G, where I'm basically just fretting that kind of that G note and playing the kind of open G and B string, and then into a kind of a D slash kind of G sharp kind of chord, where you're basically you're fretting that G sharp note, which is the fourth fret of the low E, and then you're basically playing a kind of a D shape, where you're fretting the third fret of the D string, third fret of the B string, and the fourth fret of the G string. And you'll notice that it's kind of it's like a D shape, but then add that G sharp note, that fourth fret. And then from there, you're going into a D shape, but you're plucking the A bass note instead of the D bass note. So it's a D shape, but with that A bass note instead. And then back into that A sharp kind of chord, where you're fretting basically an A, but adding that A sharp note. To a B minor. And then back into an A. And let me get kind of caught up because I just went through a bunch of chords here. Let's get caught up to kind of where we're at. We'll be at that. Isn't it amazing a man like me can feel this way? let's go through that sequence again here. After the A sharp, you're doing that, and this part basically starts with the lyric of "Isn't it amazing that man like me?" Something along those lines. So you're going from that A sharp to a B minor, F sharp minor, G, and then that kind of G sharp, kind of, I don't know, it's a G sharp kind of a chord, basically, but you're basically, again, playing that G sharp note and then kind of a D shape. Then into a D shape, but with an open A. Then into that A sharp chord. And then into a B minor. And then back down to an A. And then up to the G. So let me, again, this part is kind of a little confusing with all these chords, but let me just kind of play through it again real quick. We'll kind of just play up to the G, and then I'll add the rest of it here. Isn't it amazing man like me can feel this way? One more time. And then once you're at that G, and I guess the lyric would be, isn't it amazing a man like me can feel this way? Tell me how much longer. So you're going from that G to the F sharp slash kind of D chord. We were kind of playing a D shape, but adding that F sharp note. Into an E minor 7. Tell me how much longer it can grow stronger every day. So you're going from a G to the D slash F sharp, E minor 7, and then you're kind of walking back up with that F sharp G, or F sharp D again, into the G, and then into an A. So let's kind of go through the whole sequence again. Now, obviously, the timing of the chords is kind of what makes that kind of riff. I'm just trying to give you the chord, shapes that are being played, and then, listen to the recording and get the feel for the timing of the chords. But this whole sequence basically starts kind of after that second chorusy part, and you get that kind of that leading chord, which is that A sharp kind of chord. And again, I'll just give you the chords again, and play through it kind of at full speed here. And then after that little sequence is done, you kind of get to that lyric where it's that, oh, how much longer? And you could kind of play an F sharp minor 7, and then a B suspended kind of B7/4 kind of chord where the F sharp minor 7 is basically just barring that second fret and adding that 4th fret A string, and then keep that bar of the 2nd fret and then fret the D string 4th fret and B string 5th fret. You get that kind of B suspended 7. And after I play through it, you kind of hear kind of where those will come in. And you can kind of hear after you kind of get those last two kind of chords, you can kind of hear where it's going back into the verse again. So again, listen for the timing of the chords, but the chords of that sequence are, after your A sharp, you're going into a B minor, F sharp minor, G, and then kind of a G sharp. Again, I'm fretting that G sharp note, and then second fret of the D string, second fret of the B string, and third fret of the G string. And then to an A bass note with the D chord, and then that A sharp chord again, into a B minor, then back down to an A, and then into a G, to that D slash F sharp kind of chord, E minor 7, and you kind of walk back up, that D slash F sharp, to the G, to the A, and then with that, oh, how much longer, you'd have that F sharp minor 7, and the B7 kind of chord. And kind of the big thing with this, when you really think about just like what's going on in the verse, you have that bass note kind of walk downs and walk ups that really create the kind of feel for this song. And after that kind of leading note of that A sharp, you can kind of see how the bass note melody line kind of goes on here. You get that B minor, but basically that bass note. To the F sharp, where the bass note's now there. To the G, where the bass note's there. To the G sharp. To the open A sharp, into that B minor. So you can see how that bass note kind of sequence went. You can kind of hear where that goes with the words, but isn't it amazing a man like me can feel this way? Tell me how much longer you can go, or what else stronger every day. Pardon the singing, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of kind of where those chords are going with the words there. Oh, how much longer? And then it would go back into the thought I was in love a couple of times before. You might also be wondering why does it sound a little bit different when it does get to that kind of second verse. Technically, the capo would move from the second fret all the way up to the fourth fret, and then you would play that exact same sequence of chords. I've seen recordings of him playing the song live, and that's what's happening. And from what I understand, that's basically the gist. And then when you get to the third verse, the capo would move all the way from the fourth fret to the sixth fret. Now, obviously, it'd be tricky to be moving the capo around during the song. So if you play it with the capo on the second fret the entire time, it'll be fine. It'll work. So basically, that's it for kind of part two. And again, basically, you know what's coming when instead of doing that kind of pull off on the A, you're using that kind of leading note, kind of leading chord, that A sharp chord. It's kind of a weird chord, but it's actually really cool because when you do play it, you can kind of hear how where it's going with the song that leads you into that next chord. But that's basically just of it. I hope this is helpful. It's a tricky little riff, and the timing of it is a little weird, but try it slow and add the speed to it, and I hope this is helpful. For those of you trying to learn this song, Music Man RN, out.